going to start with the fundamentals. So this is a great graphic. You have client-facing solutions. So right here, you can see you have Alpine, you have Engage, Airship. These are a little bit more blue chip, Spring Big Weed Maps. But you have, your basic client-facing solution. So these are all the platforms that attempt to take telecom and repackage it in a way that is more targeted, more sophisticated. It's not about just buying phone numbers and like sending one call to send a message. There's a lot of nuance here that we're going to go through. Folks like us that are consumer-facing, client-facing, they then build into platforms that are listed here. There's many of these. I put the biggest ones here that matter. So these are telecom API platforms. So Cinch, Telnex. Telnex arguably has a monopoly on cannabis. There's a lot of cannabis vendors on Telnex. Twilio used to have a lot of people come, I think it was January, February, March 21. Twilio made a 24-hour notice window and kicked off over 100 vendors. Not individual clients, vendors with hundreds of clients. So there was multiple weeks where people were down, and there's not any reason for anybody below this client-facing line to give anybody else above there notice as it pertains to cannabis. So with the US federal stance on the plant, unfortunately, there's a lot of gray area that comes with that as a result. So anyways, Cinch, Telnex, Twilio, those are all considered telecom API platforms. You have engineers that build platforms on top of these. They make it easy to do stuff that would be more complex, one layer deeper. Each of these is going to have minimum commits if you want lower pricing. By default, Alpine is much lower than a Twilio or any of these providers as a default state, even before you make commitments or anything that's larger where we can work off that. Exclusive direct to carriers. So these are huge minimum commits if they'll even take your call. We're talking millions a month plus, easily 5 million plus, right? There's some nuance to that, but for the most part, if you're going to do this in a big way, you can't really go direct to these guys. And you also don't want to, when you're talking about building a cannabis specific platform, it kind of having this extra layer here gives these other guys with direct connections to carriers a little bit more of an excuse. They can basically diversify their risk across the other subs. And if they have a problem with a cannabis message, they'll just flag it, make it these people's problem, and they will never actually even see the client-facing solution at the end of the day on who this person is and who their clients are. So there's just separations layers there. On top of huge minimum commits, they have very heavy engineering burden. You're basically building Cinch, Telnex, Twilios on top of these. Very key specialty as well. So as an example, Cineverse is basically a monopoly on AT&T with a direct-to-carrier relationship. There are other people with that, but if you're sending a message through Twilio that goes to an AT&T device, it's gonna go route through Cineverse. I mean, it's almost guaranteed. So there's a bunch of nuance there where you have these exclusive direct carriers that all have different layers of filtration. They have different rules. They have different acceptable use policies. And so there's different flagging depending on where it's routed throughout this entire chain, which makes this very complicated when you have something that these carriers don't want you doing.